So I think that, it will be available very quickly, but
The next thing I'd like to do is welcome GI futurist Praveen Suthrum to the stage to deliver the keynote address on trends for the future of gastroenterology. Thank you so much for partnering with us and sharing your insights with us, Praveen. All right, we'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you. I'm deeply impressed with the direction AGA is taking and really opening doors for innovation. And thank you so much for having me. We have a task at hand. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to invite you to open your mind to look at gastroenterology a little bit differently than you're used to. So let's begin. Can the clicker be on, please? Thank you. Disclosures, I'm an entrepreneur. I work with GI practices and organizations and companies. But a more important disclosure is I'm not a gastroenterologist. Do you remember the Great Recession of 2008? It was the time of the housing bubble, widespread unemployment, and Americans lost $14 trillion in net worth. And it was called the most severe since World War II. And what you see on screen is the NASDAQ stock index, and it hit an all-time low. And when you look at this graph, you'd think that there's really no future. But then just you wait, because when you expand out and go all the way to 2024, that Great Recession doesn't appear all that great anymore. It's just a blip in time and a blip in the history of NASDAQ. And you see that orange curve, it very interestingly resembles an exponential curve, a theme that will repeat again and again over the next few minutes. Around the same time, there was something else that was happening. Netflix began delivering movies to the PC. Note the language, they called it the PC back then, they didn't say online. Apple reinvented the phone with the iPhone, and we now behave as though the iPhone existed forever. It's really not, it was 2007. Amazon launched the Kindle. Twitter, which is now called X, got its start at a conference called South by Southwest. Airbnb, back then it was called Air, Bed and Breakfast, they figured out how to rent your assets or mine and make money off of us. And Google wasn't far behind. They launched the Android operating system. Meanwhile, in gastroenterology, the New York Times, this was in March 2008, ran this article, 2 tests added to recommended list to prevent or detect colorectal cancer. The second test had to do with stool DNA testing. And at about the same time, Dr. David Alkes from Mayo and his colleagues published this paper on stool DNA testing. And what I find most interesting is actually what it says in the background. It says few data are available. But we didn't have to wait for long because that few data multiplied because it took on an exponential curve. From in 2015, 11,000, 40,000, 100,000, 230,000, 1.7 million. And 1.7 million was about the time when I published my book, Scope Forward. And it was about this. Because what I recognized back then was that stool DNA testing was actually digital biology. And if anything gets on a digital curve, it will get on an exponential curve. And there you have it. Last year, 18 million screenings. If this is not exponential, then what is? Now, we all remember the COVID period. It seems, just yesterday, but it's already 5 years. And there's a very strange correlation between these two periods in time. The Great Recession signaled the shift to digital. The technologies that we take for granted today, I'm sure many of you used Uber or Lyft to get here. All that was possible because of what started back then. What the pandemic has done is it has laid the foundation to digital health. Because when you look at what was happening in gastroenterology at around the same time, several companies got a start or pivoted or raised a whole bunch of money during that same period. For example, Iterative Health back then was called Iterative Scopes. And they were trying to figure out a business model. They started in AI and now clinical trials, but they ended up raising $200 million. Geneoscopy, which focused on stool RNA testing, also raised, if I recall correctly, $350 million. And there are several other startups. Virgo got a start thanks to AGA. They went on to raise money. Oshi Health pivoted. This company, Vivante Health, is now called Cylinder. All of them got a start back then. Now, the interesting question is, if you put this on an exponential curve, where would you land a few years from now? The only difference from that time in history and now, like I'm referring to the Great Recession period of 2008 and now, the big difference is that everything is accelerating at a rapid pace. We are at an inflection point. We're at a big inflection point. Just before DDW, we had mastermind conclave, what I call as a conclave, confluence of industry leaders and people innovating in GI. And somebody said, you know, the wave is coming. Actually, the wave is not coming. We are in the wave. You know, it's right on top of our head. And if we are not able to see it, the reason is we're too close to the surface. You got to zoom out and it'll become obvious and apparent to you. Now, when you look ahead to the future, it's easy as an entrepreneur for me to say that, oh, future is going to be exciting. I'm always optimistic. I'm always going to see the glass which is half full. But I have to question that aspect of my personality and ask, what if it could be dystopian? And what if it could be disruptive? So let's talk about that. All of you are here. Many of your colleagues are not. And when you go back home, and tell them that there was this fellow who was talking about this future of GI and he was saying dystopian and disruption and all of that, the first response you're likely to get is that of denial. They're going to say, my patient calendar is so full, I can't even keep up. What's going to possibly go wrong? There's going to be resistance because we are talking about job disruption, not just for you, but the wider industry that gastroenterology supports. Obviously, there's insecurity. Why insecurity? Because it's not because of what GI is or what it is going to be. It's because people's mortgages are tied to the current revenue stream. People's kids' education, college funds are tied to this. Your future retirement plans are tied to this. So there's a strong emotional attachment to not change. So, and we already know there's enough of exhaustion and burnout, but the big thing is, in this field, in gastroenterology, there's a strong identity towards a single procedure, colonoscopy. So, when something comes, a shift comes, and that identity is yanked away from you, is taken away from you, then who are you if you're not that? And that leaves a void, and we will go through this, what I'm referring to as the valley of death, but we need to get on the other side. And initiatives like this, what AGA is doing, that's why are very, very impressive. It's important. It's actually imperative. I went to ChatGPT, like David, and I used another tool within ChatGPT called Deep Research. It's a newer tool that's launched a few weeks ago. And it won't respond to you in a second or two. It takes about 15 minutes to do this research. So I asked the question, and I gave all the information that I had, and I asked the question, tell me what happened to colonoscopy reimbursements in the last 25 years, not 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, because everybody in the GI community is telling me it's the gold standard, so obviously you should be rewarded for it. So here's what I found. Medicare colonoscopy payments have declined 7% in nominal dollars, but that's not something that we need to consider, because you need to see in real dollar terms what actually happened. We're talking about 40 to 50% decline in real terms. So my question to you is, if you're really saving the world and you're tied to this procedure, and if that's what's happening, then why aren't you being rewarded fairly? It's a question that you must really ask yourselves and all your colleagues who are not showing up at DDW yet. Larry Kozinski is here. I have this conversation and I give these talks, but one of the responses that I get is that of confusion, and I don't know what to do. So I don't know what to do, so tomorrow let me just get back to scoping. And then the time goes away. So I'm going to, Larry, you can actually say it, you're right here, but I'll still play. Can we have the audio, please?
That is still the case, if not more so than they were before.
Okay, what is more so we're going to find out. I'm going to replay it for you.
GI practices are still colonoscopy factories. That is still the case, if not more so than they were before.
So you should catch him later and ask him why he referred to this as colonoscopy factories, but I think it's worth introspecting. I went deeper and further. I went to the Medscape Physician Burnout and Depression Survey. Guess who we are talking about? 73% the reason for depression is job burnout. And a third reason for depression is being a physician. You're depressed because you're a doctor. And the quotes are even more amazing. One of it says, even the dog avoids me. The other says, I've lost faith in humanity. And this one took the cake for me. I'm going to read it out aloud. I've reached my limit for the BS I can take from the hospital administration, insurance companies, demanding patients. How long do you think we have before this thread finally really snaps? Let's get to the trends. I'm going to lay out all the trends first and then cull out 5 from that are relevant to GI. And here you are. The all-pervasive trend is that of AI, and it is morphing into artificial general intelligence, AGI. It's the new electricity. So if you're not embracing it, it's like, you're going to be working in the dark. I'm going to very quickly walk through all of these trends. Let's start with AI agents. Think of them as your employees or people who you work with, or even you, but just that it's AI. Imagine all the repeatable tasks in the back office, in the clinical operations, in your surgery centers, in the hospitals, can be potentially done with AI, can be done today. Humanoid robots are not from the future, they're here and now. If you walk into the BMW factories in North Carolina, they're working, and they're working independently. And they're going to be in our homes before the end of this decade, before 2030, and not very expensive. The companies are planning to price it at around $300 per month. That's like leasing a car. Yeah, so I'm assuming all of you will have 2 or 3 robots at home. There's a company out of Dallas, Texas, that's building a colonoscopy robot. Please, it's called Surgical Automations. Please look them up. Internet is going to be pretty much everywhere. There are enough satellites, and there's going to be more. AR and VR, Dr. Brennan Spiegel, I don't know if he's here, but he's written a book on VR called VRX, is from Cedars-Sinai. So there's lots of insights into gastroenterology and VR. Medical education can happen inside of the metaverse. The brain-computer interface, Neuralink recently inserted the chip inside the brain, and they couldn't find humans to do it, so they actually got a robot to do it. And the prediction is that robots are going to take over surgery, not just GI, all surgery. So watch out for that. The gut-brain axis is making big strides. I think it's one of the most exciting things that can happen for gastroenterology. While the tariff disruptions were going on and the markets were very, very unstable the last few weeks, there was something that was very stable. Can you guess what that is? Yes, it's gold, but it was also Bitcoin. So cryptocurrency, that's another trend. Microbiome is, I interviewed the podcast will be out soon, but I interviewed Leo Grady, who is a startup founder of a company called Jonah. He said something that was very, very insightful, and he said microbiome could be a new medical specialty. And my question was, if that's going to be the new medical specialty, what role is gastroenterology and the gastroenterologists are playing to shape that specialty? Drones could be delivering drugs. People are saying they're going to live until 120. Longevity is one of the biggest draws for investment. Non-invasives, stool RNA testing, stool DNA testing, liquid biopsy, and using CRISPR to edit the genome, all of it. Google made a big quantum computing announcement. Like, if whatever we've seen with respect to computing, it's nothing compared to what is coming. Pillbots, there's a startup in GI that calls it a drone that swims inside your gut. It's a company called Endiatics that's based in the Bay Area. 3D printing, I know Endosound got an award from AGA a few years ago. Endosound makes any scope into an ultrasound. That wouldn't have been possible without 3D printing. Now, we like to think that the place of service is either the hospital or your office or your surgery center. What if it is inside a self-driving car tomorrow? Are we prepared? Because your patients will show up there. Now, here's the thing. At this point, you may agree or disagree with me, but the trends, once these start, there's really no rolling back the clock on this one. It will not stop. AI, this is the worst that we have seen of AI. This is the worst that we have seen of liquid biopsy. This is as less sensitive that stool DNA or stool RNA testing is going to be. It's only going to get better. Here's the secret. The future of gastroenterology lies in the convergence of these exponential technologies. It's not these isolated trends, but the convergence. Now, here's everything coming together. Number one, I think it's fair to accept that the procedure-led era of gastroenterology is ending. The shift that needs to occur is moving from just scoping skills, but to consider gut intelligence as a whole. Two, the rise of the AI-augmented gastroenterologist. It's not you alone, it's not AI alone, it's GI plus AI. The shift that needs to occur, just like with a car to a self-driving car, is move from one-on-one to many, where learning can happen and delivery of care can happen collectively. Three, gut is the new frontline of health. If you consider the microbiome, if you consider metabolic GI, if you consider mental GI, collectively, we're talking of a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. How do I know? Look at all the venture investments that are going into this space. Number four, gut health is moving home. Patients are decentralizing care. Why? Because there's going to be a test. What if a non-invasive test comes that detects colon cancer and makes it as easy as a P test, like a pregnancy test? So if that is here today, then what's going to happen to all the business models that we have structured around this? What needs to happen is you drive the decentralization or the field gets left behind. Number five, always on GI care. We are used to episodic care, like patient has a problem, has a symptom, comes to the clinic, you fix it, he goes back home or she goes back home. What if care blends into your everyday life and silently is always listening and is preventative and is predictive? That's where that possibility exists today, provided all of us take out time to build that future. And I'm going to finally leave you with a little treat. It's Praveen AI. This is really not me. It's AI talking to two legends from the past. The volume, please.
Today at Digestive Disease Week, we stand at an inflection point in gastroenterology. But before we look forward, it's worth looking back to the very people who shaped our field. What would they say if they could see GI today? To help us find out, I've invited two legends across time. Dr. William Beaumont, the father of gastric physiology, and Hippocrates, the father of medicine. Dr. Beaumont, if you could speak to the GI community today, what would you say?
Praveen, a fascinating time you live in. You have AI, real-time gut analysis, and microbiome science. But I have to ask, why has gastroenterology become so limited? I experimented on a man's stomach through a hole in his body, for heaven's sake. And yet, you are still using tools from my era.
My friend Beaumont, it is not just the tools. The soul of medicine has lost its way. All disease begins in the gut. I said this 2,400 years ago. But instead of treating the gut as the core of health, today's generation only looks at it when disease appears.
So, tell me, what would you do differently if you were leading gastroenterology today?
Gastroenterologists must return to discovery. Your tools, AI, digital diagnostics, microbiome science, should be making you explorers, not just technicians. AI should not just detect polyps, it should be predicting disease, guiding interventions, and making GI the most advanced specialty in medicine.
You must lead the microbiome revolution. The gut is the key to longevity, immunity, and mental health. If gastroenterologists don't lead this, others will. Medicine was never meant to be mechanical. When you see only the procedure, you miss your deeper purpose.
Thank you, Dr. Beaumont. Thank you, Hippocrates. You've reminded us that even as technology accelerates, the heart of medicine remains timeless. The future of gastroenterology will be built not only by what we invent, but by how deeply we remember why we began.
That's where I want to leave you with. I have worked with physicians for a long time. You're some of the most brilliant people on the planet. It's not easy to be a doctor. But now is not the time to stand on the sidelines and watch this wave come. It's already here. It's important for you to lead and lead boldly and not look for permission to lead. So be those kind of leaders. And if I have to borrow words from DDW, be gutsy. Thank you. And this is a way to stay in touch with me.